Welcome, everyone, to our fifth presentation in the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute 2026 at the U Lecture Series. I'm Laura Peterson, an OLLI volunteer. The Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of Minnesota is a vibrant learning community for people aged 50 plus. Part of the College of Continuing and Professional Studies, OLLI belongs to a national network of Osher Lifelong Learning Institutes, supported by the Bernard Osher Foundation. I would like to acknowledge and say thank you to our sponsor, the University of Minnesota Alumni Association. We also acknowledge that the University of Minnesota Twin Cities is built within the traditional homelands of the Dakota people. It is important to acknowledge the peoples on whose land we live, learn, and work as we seek to improve and strengthen our relations with our tribal nations. Today's presentation is How Your Favorite Childhood Stories Came to Life with Dr. Lisa Van Drasek. Dr. Van Drasek is the Miranker Family Curatorial Chair of the Kerlan Collection, Children's Literature Research Collections at the University of Minnesota Libraries. While serving as the children's librarian of the Bank Street College of Education, Lisa founded the Cook Prize, given to a STEM book chosen by children grades 3 to 4. She was also a frequent guest lecturer at the Pratt Institute School of Information and Library Science in storytelling and folklore, collection development, and services to children. Lisa has reviewed children's books for the New York Times, earlyword.com, Shelf Awareness, and blogs at Blue Ox Review. She has served as a juror on the Caldecott Committee, the New York Times Best Illustrated, the Newbery Committee, the Ezra Jack Cates Award, Trudy Berger Prize, the Jerusalem Book Fair, National Book Awards for Young People's Literature, and the American Library Association's Notable Children's Books. I will turn this over to you, Dr. Van Drasek.
My video, oh, there we go. Start my video. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I got a promotion. I don't have a doctorate, but I can fake it sometimes. My official title at the University of Minnesota is librarian. And what could be better than to be a librarian in an academic library that serves everyone? So I'm going to start my slides. And let's see if that works. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. Let's stop the share. Let's go to the slide. There we go. I need someone to tell me if you can see it. Laura,
You might need to reshare from Zoom to
okay,
share your
let's try
slides.
that.
Yeah.
How's that?
Oh, there we go.
There we go. So you heard the land acknowledgement, so I'm going to start there. The land acknowledgement that Laura shared is not a gratuitous statement. As a librarian at the University of Minnesota, as a children's librarian, as an educator, I will share with you how we make amends to the Dakota peoples whose land we reside. We buy, read, and promote the works of Indigenous authors and illustrators. I need to make that a little smaller. There we go. We serve the community by creating resources for and by their creators. So what you're looking at on this slide is curriculum that we've created. We've read hundreds of books and recommend them to classroom libraries, public libraries, school libraries. We have also taken this curriculum and aligned it with the Minnesota State Education Standards so that teachers and librarians and parents and children can share these works with their peers and with their students. This is the Elmer L. Anderson Library, and those of you of a certain age or of Minnesota heritage would know that Elmer L. Anderson was a governor here in Minnesota, but he was also, as the libraries call him, a bookman. He collected rare books. In this library that was built 26 years ago, brought together 14 different distinct collections that were scattered all over the campus. And in this very special building, and what makes this building special is that you're looking at just a tiny portion of the building. Below, 90 feet below the surface, is a cavern that is 2 football fields wide, 90 feet below the ground level. Now, it is built in the side of the Mississippi River in sandstone, and you can Google it and go online. Archives and Special Collections, there's videos of how this incredible cavern, man-made cavern, was made. But what it makes for us is a secure spot to put rare materials, rare books, manuscripts, and original art, and maps, and architectural models at a constant 64 degrees and 40% humidity, which is perfect for paper. You can come tour our cavern the first Friday of every month during the school year. So if you come tomorrow at 11:30, we serve a light lunch. At 12 o'clock, one or two curators will give a short lecture, kind of like a TED Talk about something in their collection or a theme that has been chosen for us. This theme this year is our senses. And the last two first Fridays, so there's one, the May 1st Friday. And then in the June 1st Friday, I will be speaking about Indigenous representation in picture books. People want to know, why is it called the Kerlan Collection? And my official title is the Miranker Family Curatorial Chair of the Kerlan Collection of Children's Literature. And Dr. Kerlan was an alum of the University of Minnesota. And when he graduated, he was one of the youngest graduates of the medical school. And he went to work for the FDA in Washington, D.C. And Dr. Kerlan started collecting books, but adult books were far too expensive for this government employee. A friend of his gave him a copy of Johnny Cottontail by Margaret Frisky, pictures by Lucia Patton, and Dr. Kerlan, Irvin Kerlan, fell in love with children's books and started collecting children's books and started making friends with the creators of children's books. And this is Don Freeman's illustration of Dr. Kerlan collecting his books. Don Freeman, you might be familiar with a classic called A Pocket for Corduroy. And Dr. Kerlan would go to special events, to bookstore signings, and he would also kind of stalk authors and say things like, I'm going to be in your neighborhood. I'd love to stop by to your studio. Or he would take a first edition, say, from Virginia Lee Burton's Mike Mulligan and the Steam Shovel, and take this first edition, wrap it up, send a self-addressed stamped paper with his return address on it, and send it to the publisher. And the publisher would then forward it to the artist or illustrator or writer. And he would write a lovely note in there saying, I love this book, and here's a first edition. Would you mind signing it to me? So many of the first editions that we have here in the collection at the Anderson Library are signed to Dr. Kerlan from the creators. Dr. Kerlan in the early 50s started sending books to the university, but the first curator was Karen Nelson Hoyle, and she held this position for 45 years. And so she continued meeting with artists, meeting with writers, going to conferences, traveling the nation. And here you see a few of her acquisitions, the Pokey Little Puppy, the work of Betsy Bowen, and Wanda Gogg's Millions of Cats. And then I arrived in 2012 from Bank Street College of Education, with very big shoes to fill. But as we know, when you get a job, you make it your own. So why should you listen to me? I'm a children's librarian. If you come away from this talk with any information at all, the number one piece of information is we are open access. I might have a class of 75 kindergartners coming to visit college, as I have done with the Hiawatha Leadership Academy. I could have undergraduates. I could have high school students. Our History Day student who was doing research in the Kerlan collection got fourth place statewide for History Day. So we're very proud of her and the research that she did in the Kerlan collection. We have special events, we have exhibits, and my next exhibit, because as you know, we have 14 different collections, have the exhibit space. We jockey for space. We will, in two more exhibits, we will partner with other collections, and the theme will be death and grieving in the archives, with original manuscripts and art and letters and rare books. And I'm looking forward to that. And in 2028, yep, 2028, I will be doing a singular exhibit on pop-up and mechanical books from 1860 to present day. Again, our special event. So this is Newbery medalist Kwame Alexander, and we might partner with a community group. So these kids came and heard Kwame Alexander. They each got a book, and that was sponsored by the Rotary, who has funds to for literacy and books. So that was a joyous occasion. We also invite corporations. So this is the leadership team of Lerner Publishing in Minnesota, looking at historic art and manuscripts. We also sometimes have a design team from Target who come in to get inspiration for their designs. As mentioned, I've served on many committees. This is the Newbery Medal, this is for chapter book. But not every book is an award winner. And when you explore in our collection, you might be just thinking of a favorite book. And this is one of my favorite books that when I came here, I said, oh my goodness, we have the manuscripts of Anne McGovern and we have the illustrations of Sims Tabak. Let's bring that up from the cavern. I want to take a look at that. And this is a classic tale that has been retold many times. So if you were doing a folklore study, you might find 26 different versions of Too Much Noise. When you go online, you're not going to see any pictures. But if when you come to the library and you want to see something, you would say, okay, I'm going to look up the title, I'm going to look up the author, I'm going to look up the illustrator, and I will see that there's an ink jacket illustration, there's color separations, there's ink separations, and we have the manuscript. So you can see how this book came together in process, and we call that process work. You know, we are interested in original art, and original art is beautiful and great for displays and exhibits. But for us, it really is the process of the making of a picture book, of a chapter book, that is of interest to researchers. How many different dummies were there for Balloons Over Broadway before the art director okayed the layout? We also hold books, just books, not so rare, Dick and Jane, not so rare, the great big fire engine book. But in 1963, these were the best-selling picture books. And so if someone is coming to research the history of children's book publishing in the United States, they might notice that it was, as Nancy Larrick said in her seminal academic article in 1963, the all-white world of children's books. And indeed it was. But that same year was The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats, and it won the Caldecott Award. And these awards are important because that means the book will be in print forever. You may have liked a wonderful picture book 5 years ago, and you go into the Red Balloon and they don't have a copy, and they said, let me see if we can order it. It's out of print. They're not reprinting it. I think it was Calvin Trillin said that a new book has the shelf life of yogurt. If a book doesn't sell in a bookstore in about 6 months, it is returnable and goes back to the publisher. Then it goes on a remainder table. So that's why these awards are so important. The other thing is you might notice that this is a picture book puffin. It's a paperback reprint. It doesn't have a Caldecott Award seal on it. The publisher got around paying the fee for the seal from the American Library Association by just writing the words Caldecott Award book. And when we talk about the history of publishing, it hasn't really changed. So if you were writing a children's book and you wrote this picture book and your grandchildren loved it and you read aloud in story time in a kindergarten class, you don't get your best friend who may have an art degree to illustrate it because publishing is a business. And what we're looking at here is the sun is a star. And this also was in 1963. And if you're into children's books or you're a children's librarian or you're a teacher, you immediately recognize the art of Eric Carle. There's nothing like it. But when this book was published, the well-known person whose name sold this book was Soon Engebretsen. And I will share with you who that is. He was the director of the Natural History Museum in New York City, and he had a series of best-selling informational books about science. And the art director at Holt selected the new and up-and-coming Eric Carle from his portfolio. And to this day, that's how artists get their first picture book, is they're paired with a well-known writer. And that's how unknown writers get their first contracts. They get paired with someone who is well-known. When you go to the University of Minnesota website and you look for the Kerlan collection, you will also see digital content. So all of our digital assets, things that the teachers and librarians and parents can look at from their own home computer, answer a question. And the Balloons Over Broadway with the materials from Melissa's suite talk about how a book is made. I share those with teachers, and my job here is not only to collect and preserve and house these materials and share them with people, but it is also to teach a variety of classes. And this is an example of thumbnail sketches that were made for a picture book project in a biology class. So imagine sitting in a biology class and I come to your classroom, we call it embedding. I embed in your classroom, maybe 3 times during the semester. I begin with picture books, science picture books, and I share those with the class and talk about how they're factual and how the information is shared and how the books are made. And they know that before a picture book is made, there are thumbnail sketches, and I give them examples of that when they come to the Kerlan collection. And this student created a picture book as her final project on photosynthesis. And it is such a delight because it explains the concept, but it also brings it home that the rays from the sun go to the plant and it is transformed through the leaves, and it creates energy that creates the flower, which creates the orange, which is plucked by the dancer. And the dancer eats the orange and has energy to dance. And what better example of this scientific concept? And as we know, when we learn something and we teach something, we really know something. People can come and research across collections. You may not be aware that Superman fought the Ku Klux Klan. And where would we find this information? We would find this in the Social Welfare History Archives here at the University of Minnesota. And the papers of the Child Study Association are here in Minnesota, honestly, because it was the professors of the University of Minnesota who reached out to them and said, oh, you're shutting down your operations. Where are your papers going? And they're like, nowhere. And they drove cross country and picked up the Social Welfare Archive. And that's why we have the papers of Joseph Frank here at the University of Minnesota. And when I first came to the University of Minnesota, it wasn't for a job, it was to do research on this person, Joseph Frank, who was a leader in literacy and education in New York City. And what happens is you request the boxes are set in the reading room, and you have all the time you want. So if there's something you're interested in, we reserve a table, a desk in our reading room. You could be there for a week, you could be there for months, you could be there for a day. We have the materials available to you, and we'll answer any questions that we can. And one of the things that I discovered reading the papers of Joseph Frank was that she testified at a Senate hearing that was discussing whether comics should be available to children from newsstands and grocery stores. And Joseph Frank testified for comics. And this was a big scare in the 1950s. And right after Joseph Frank testified for comics, Eleanor Roosevelt, my hero, Eleanor Roosevelt, testified against comics, that they were bad for children and were rotting their brains. And someday I'll do more research on that. You may be familiar with the work of Kate DiCamillo, who lives in Minnesota. This is her book, Because of Winn-Dixie. I often share this with fifth grade classes. This is the first page of the first draft of Because of Winn-Dixie. And I don't know if I mentioned this, the majority of our materials here, and we have the leading collection of manuscripts, original art, and contemporary children's books here in the United States, are given to us through the generosity of the author, of the illustrator. And Kate DiCamillo will be the first person to tell you she doesn't want anyone seeing what she calls her dirty laundry. This first draft is a one-page run-on sentence. Miss DiCamillo cannot punctuate. She cannot spell random capitals. It's a one-page run-on sentence. And what I might do, and I have done, is I Xerox it off and I put the kids in pairs. So I might have two classes of fifth graders in our classroom space here, and I will ask them to try to read it to each other and try to start correcting it. I ask them to edit it. And they usually get about 4 or 5 sentences in, if you could call these sentences. And then we look at, so this is the fourth draft with comments from Jane Resch Thomas. Chapter 1, my name is India Opal Baloney, and last summer my daddy, the preacher, sent me grocery shopping. I go shopping all the time because I do not have a mother, and the preacher is too distracted to pick out groceries. And Jane Resch Thomas writes, great start. And you and I would say, great, amazing. Do you say the title is Whistling for Winn-Dixie? And this is 10 drafts later, the published page. Chapter 1. My name is India Opal Bologna, and last summer my daddy, the preacher, sent me to the store for a box of macaroni and cheese, some white rice, and 2 tomatoes. And I came back with a dog. It just sings. And again, you would ask Kate, wow, what happened during this process? And she would say, I read everything aloud. I have a group of writer friends and we share our materials. So if you are a person who's thinking you have a book in you, get together with a group of people. I don't write books, I write book reviews. And I read aloud. I have 3 trusted friends. I pick up the phone. I say, do you have a minute? I need to read aloud. This is my mail. I get 1 copy of every book published in English for children and young adults. I obviously can't read all of them. I read probably about 5 books a week, real books, and I read most of the picture books. And I have help. People volunteer here at the Kerlan Collection. So if you're looking for something to do and you have a little time on your hands and you love children's books, come talk to us. We'll put you to work. Back to what do we collect? People often ask, what do we collect? How do we know which books out of all of those books? Well, of course, the award winners, so the Caldecott Awards. But if you are looking for great books to share with children, think about the Children's Book Committee at the Bank Street College of Education. People often ask me, why don't you make book lists? Why don't you do recommended lists? Because there's a committee of 22 women in New York City who read every book published. They age the books, they tell you why they're excellent and who they're for. And I don't have to do all that work, they do it for me. The Irma Black Award is for the best picture books of the year. The short list is selected by teachers, librarians, social workers, parents, and then they're voted on by children. And so here's from one year the books that were considered the best books of the year by children. By the time you get to the final 4, it doesn't matter which one got the gold medal. Thousands of children have voted that It Fell from the Sky was their favorite book, but all of the top 4 books are excellent. The Cook Prize is, my love is STEM and science books for kids. And so the Cook Prize, you might know the seal is a little familiar. It was done by Brian Floca. And that year, the gold medal was Cougar Crossing. Again, all 4 of these books, excellent books. And over the last 15 years, if you read all of those new books that won these awards, you have in your soul great picture books to share. Back to the collection. So what you're seeing right now is Goodnight Moon. And Goodnight Moon is by Margaret Weiss Brown and Clement Hurd. And Margaret Weiss Brown, you may be familiar with Goodnight Moon, which was not an out of the gate favorite bestseller, but it grew on people. And if you come to the Kerlan collection and you want to see this original art, we'd be happy to show it to you. So what we do is we'll put it in the reading room. You come when we're open 9 to 5 weekdays. Sorry about the weekends. But note that these are color studies because at that time there was no original color art. It was done in color separations. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means later. But notice the old lady whispering hush is an old lady, not an old bunny, as you can see on the side there. And there's this map of South America behind her. And scholar, researcher, historian Leonard Marcus would say, well, in the notes from Ursula Nordstrom, the editor, it says, get rid of the map. And you see the bunny now has a bookshelf behind her. And we can know that bookselling is a business. Ursula Nordstrom says, we're not in the business of selling maps. We sell books. Put some books in there. And that Leonard Marcus would talk about that this room is aspirational. This is from 1948, post-World War II. There was a housing shortage. No little bunny had a big, great green room. No Little Bunny in 1948 had a library of books like that, and they certainly didn't have a telephone. Another Bank Streeter from the Bureau of Educational Experiments wrote in a book, "A hole is to dig, toes are to wiggle, a hat is to wear on the train, on a train." And that is a hole is to dig, but illustrated by Maurice Sendak. So Ruth Krauss and Maurice Sendak were also part of the Writers Lab. So Margaret Weiss Brown, Clement Hurd, Maurice Sendak, Ruth Krauss were all part of the Writers Lab that went into children's classrooms at the City and Country School and at the Play School and listened to how children spoke, how children talked about their daily lives. Because before these books were published, children's books were aspirational, were inspirational. There were biographies, there were folk tales and fairy tales, there were histories, but there was not a body of work that reflected children's everyday lives, or what Leonard Marcus calls the milk bottle school. Our very own Wanda Gog from New Ulm, Minnesota. So we have her family photo albums. Her father was a photographer. We have original art and sketches. We have the original manuscript for Millions of Cats. And I love showing this because a children's picture book manuscript has not changed over all of these years. If you submit an 18-page picture book manuscript to a publisher, they know you're an amateur. Picture books, 16 spreads, 32 pages. The manuscript shouldn't exceed 2 pages. And this is the hand lettering and the original art, which we hold at the Kerlan collection of Wanda Gog's Millions of Cats. And then we have the process work. So these are the blues. And we see how it's going to lay out on the page with the editorial and the art director's marks. And then we see it laid out on the page. And many people would say that Millions of Cats was the first modern picture book, because you may notice the words and the pictures are integrated. And before that, what we saw was picture words, words, pictures, but not integrated as a whole on the page. And there's Wanda Gog with her kitty. She was very bohemian. And so we have her handwritten notes, we have her journals, we have her photo albums, we have sketches, and then people come and do research here at the library and create their own books, which we also hold, and their manuscripts. So we have Deborah Cogan Ray's papers here. Virginia Lee Burton, Little House. So I'm going to watch the time here. Little House. So here we have original art. We see it's watercolor on paper. Let me tell you the story of Virginia Lee Burton, because it is not only the story of a children's book artist, but it is a story of women artists in America. So Virginia Lee Burton was an art student, and she fell in love with her sculpting professor. It was very romantic. They were in Boston, and she married him. And she did go to work for Houghton Mifflin in Boston in the publishing house as an assistant in the picture book department. And then she actually had her children and started telling stories to her boys, 2 boys, and came up with these stories, Little House. And she was an artist. She worked in watercolor, she worked in scratchboard. And so you can see this modern picture book, the story of the Little House, integrated text, a story, an international story, a story that spoke to many people during this period of time of urban sprawl and growth in suburban living. And so here we have the hand lettering held in the collection, and it says true up the lettering. So they're going to change the kern so it doesn't, so it evens up on the page. And then we see her art. So if you came to the Kerlan and you want to see the original watercolor art, but that's not all she was. So during the Depression, there was no money. She was an artist. Her husband was an artist. She created the cooperative, a printing cooperative of fabric called Folly Cove in Massachusetts, and recruited other housewives to create this beautiful, beautiful fabric, these prints, this repetitious print that reflected their lives. And this is actually the graduation piece of how, if somebody made it through the process of being an apprentice at Folly Clove, and when they graduated, and the way they made their fabric prints was she had linoleum from Navy ships that was decommissioned, and they carved into that linoleum and created these beautiful prints and inked them, turned them onto the fabric, and then jumped on them to create the impression. And that was the work of Folly Cove. And you can see this here. This is Folly Cove fabric. And I know there are those of you among us who are thinking to themselves, hey, I know a lot about fabric and art and design. I have never heard of Folly Cove. How is that possible? They did these images from folklore and fairy tales. So this is William Tell, Robin Hood. Oh, I think it's Robin Hood. Square dancing, country life, gossip. This is gossip. And she actually can see the women of Folly Cove talking to each other. And this is all printed fabric. They became famous. 1945, Folly Cove designers. This is from Life magazine. They became internationally renowned. Virginia Lee Burton traveled to Germany and Norway and Japan because of the claim they had for this art. Again, why haven't you ever heard of Virginia Lee Burton and Folly Cove and these women? So here's the sad part of the story. Virginia Lee Burton was acclaimed in her life. Her husband, who had a few years on her, who was an artist, was not so acclaimed and was extremely jealous. And I heard this from a Japanese librarian who went to stay at Folly Cove and visit Virginia Lee Burton. He was abusive, and she died of lung cancer fairly early. And when she died, he destroyed her workshop, he destroyed her linoleum presses, burned all the fabric, and refused to allow any of it to exist in our world. And why is it we do know who Virginia Lee Burton is? Why is it that we have her part of her archive here at the Kerlan collection? Because the business of publishing is the publisher owns the copyright and the images as long as the book is in print. And Virginia Lee Burton's books, Mike Mulligan and the Steam Shovel, The Little House, Katie and the Big Snow, are all classic books that stayed in print. So the next generation holds the copyright now for the books that are out of print, like Calico, but everything else is still in print in your bookstores and available because of the business of publishing. This is Kate McMullen and Jim McMullen. The Kerlan Collection honors people with a lifetime's work, and who've been very generous to the Kerlan collection. Jim McMullen, when he moved from Sag Harbor to Manhattan, packed up his studio. Now he's 93 years old right now. This was 15 years ago. He finally decided, well, maybe I'm retiring. He didn't stop working, but he packed up his studio and sent us everything. And part of the history of publishing that you see here, this is Jim McMullen's work. He is a famous, I can't emphasize enough, illustrator. His illustration, he did the last 35 years of Lincoln Center posters, and those works are at Lincoln Center at the New York Public Library. We hold his children's work. His wife is a prolific children's book writer, and she had a series of fractured Greek myths. This was from Have a Hot Time in Have a Hot Time Hades. And Jim wanted to illustrate these chapter books, and he sent some illustrations. There we have Cerberus with three heads. He wanted to illustrate his wife's book, and the publisher said no. And he tried again. And there's all the notes from the editor and the art director. Yeah, they're not loving it. Have a hot time, Hades. And Jim did not get the job. And this is the hardcover and the paperback reprint. And yeah, he didn't get either job. So just because you're married to the writer doesn't mean you get to do the work. When I first came, Phyllis Root is a Minnesotan. When I first came to the Kerlan collection, again, I was like, I love this book so much. I wanna see the original art. You also see the missteps. So here's Kiss the Cow. And when the materials came up, I saw the dummy book and it didn't look a thing like Will Hillenbrand's work. So I picked up the phone, loved Living Donors, picked up the phone, called Phyllis Root, and she said, yes, about that. The first artist that they hired refused to have a human being kissing a cow. And I love talking to MCAD students about this situation because what do you think happened to that artist? Exactly right. They got fired and they shopped the manuscript around. And here are some thumbnail sketches from Kiss the Cow. This is Anna Louise, the middle child. She was not the oldest, she was not the youngest. She was the most stubborn and the most curious. So, process work, thumbnail sketches, some color studies, those goes to the art director and the editor, and that's how they decide how the book is going to look. And this is Will Hillenbrand's actual thumb, which he sent me when he heard that I always talk about his book. And when it's a professional artist, you can see the thumbnail sketch, which is tiny, totally resembles the finished art because they're professionals. So when they submit their thumbnail sketches, the art director knows that's what it's going to look like. And this is a double page spread. You might notice a part where there's sky there. Remember, artists for children's books have to leave room for the words. The University of Minnesota has a publishing program for our faculty and teachers to provide open access to the work we do. So if you want to talk to children or you see us at the Twin Cities Book Festival or at the Bell Museum or we're doing some kind of community engagement, we are usually working with our writing boxes. And this is a free download to anyone who wants to use it to see mentor text and the connection between reading and writing. And there's the cover. Again, free download. You can go online and buy it for $40, or you can just download it yourself. So there'll be mentor texts, there'll be map making, there'll be things for kids to do. And it was really a lifesaver during COVID because I would conduct seminars, professional development seminars for teachers, but I would also embed in fifth grade classes. By the way, we're on the last day of Poetry Month. Do you have a poem in your pocket? So here's mapping. Mapping can be anything. The digestive system. You can see this boy, he did a map of the digestive system. And when he goes all the way down to the end, he says, you don't want to go here. Fairy tale maps, treasure maps, and these are printouts that you can print out and use in your house, rainy days. Young adult projects. The ABC of it is by Leonard Marcus with a forward and editing by me, which is basically the history of North American children's literature. Again, a free download. So we talk about what we have in the collection, like the work of Lois Ehlert, and you see the dummy and you see the finished. The work of a local artist here, Lauren Stringer. This is a double page spread, but you can also see the different covers. Red Rubber Boot Day with the child splashing was the finished cover, but the first cover she had with the two kitties looking out. But then you can see the dummy where it's changed over. And this is Lois Ehlert, her collage papers. And if you download this, you can see the actual handmade paper that she made, then created these collages. So we see the contemporary works, and you can look through the ABC of it and say, hey, I want to go hold that in my hand. You can hold James Ransom's Oil on Paper from Dark Day and Light Night. You can go online to see the online exhibit, Balloons Over Broadway. We have an online exhibit, Little Red Riding Hood, 300 years of Red Riding Hood using the Jack Zipes collection of children's books that were donated to the Kerlan collection. So if you go online and you go to Little Red Riding Hood, you can do a comparative study that can model to any other folktale like Pinocchio. So we chose the common image of When She Meets the Wolf. And this is Trina Shart-Hyman's Red Riding Hood, When She Meets the Wolf. And she met the wolf. And Jack Sipes would say that was the key moment. So we took 3 centuries of this. And if you go online, you can look at this image through the centuries. You can also, if you want to look at the actual book it came from, all of these are in our collection. And you can make choices. You can think about Little Red Riding Hood around the world. Or you can actually hear Jack Sipes talk about Little Red Riding Hood. And that's one of my favorite, which is James Marshall. The making of picture books. Remember I said I'd talk about pre-separated art. So the art of picture books, you can go to that website, but I'm going to show you part of it. When you look at this and you see these gray blobs, that is the actual original art. There is no color. The artist, Ariane Dewey, saw it in her head in color, in her mind's eye in color, and did not see the actual color until the printer sent the proof sheets. And according to Ava Weiss, the art director at Green Willow, she was a genius at this. So when you look at this, do you know the hues of the yellow combined with the hues of the red? This is 4 colors, only 4 colors were used to make this image. And so we have her papers, we have her notebooks in which she's making these choices. And in the notebooks, this is all we see in actual color before it comes off the press. She has made the choices. And that's also how we know that Ariane Dewey did the color work for all of Jose Owego's books. And why is that important? Because it's the history of women artists. Ariane Dewey did not get credit for the first 5 books that she created with her husband, Jose Orwego. Because, yeah, it wasn't that important, she guessed, to get credit for Leo the late bloomer. And I'm here to say it is important. This work that she did, the line drawing of the duck is Jose. Everything else is Ariane. These books would not be these books without her color work. Children's book art and techniques. Answers the question, what am I looking at? Am I looking at watercolor? Am I looking at scratchboard? Am I looking at gouache? Am I looking at collage? So when you go on this website, you can see all these different techniques. You can also see the different artists and their different styles. So let's go to printmaking. And this is linoleum block. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is etching. And this is a book called Oink. And we go to this page and we can see that it is Arthur Geisert's art from Oink. And when you click through to enlarge, you see the full double page spread. We don't need a lot of space for the words because what are the words? Oink, the whole book. That's the only words in the whole book. But you can get a close-up of what it looks like to be an etching. Again, Balloons Over Broadway, generous, award-winning illustrator Melissa Sweet sent us everything. And I mean everything. Her research on the puppeteer, Tony Sarg. We can see her own personal notes of how she starts to think about how will this be a picture book biography. We see her ideas, her questions that she has that she wants to answer in the book. And what does the artist need? Needs imagination and tools and materials and a prototype. And that's why we call it the engineering of a picture book, because it's trial and error. So if you're not familiar with Tony Sarg, he made the balloons in the Thanksgiving Day Parade. And we see in the dummy books how Tony Sarg begins to experiment. And then we see these thumbnail sketches, not like the other thumbnail sketches, but it gives the layout of how Melissa Sweet thinks this picture book is going to look at like, and how every double page spread should be. And then we have 10 dummy books where she's experimenting with different things. Now, let me tell you things that archivists hate in case you're saving your papers for us. We hate staples. We hate rubber bands. They turn into little gummy worms. We hate rubber cement. What do we love? Post-its are great. Staples are evil. And here we see Post-its. We see the editorial comments. We see as the dummy goes back and forth. And now a lot of this is done digitally, but these are physical objects. And oh, the art director said, love, love, love this spread. So she knows she's on the right page and she continues along in this style. And then we're getting closer because we're starting to get a little color in there. And we have all this original art, and this is the finished page. So, phew. Look at me, nailed the time. So I'm going to stop the share. And this is the moment where you say, I didn't understand that, or I have some questions. Karen says in the chat that she has old tablecloths with some Folly Cove. Well, if you feel like donating them to the Kerlan, please. We have one. We have one like canvasy linen. I'm not really sure what the fabric is. One Folly Cove fabric in our collection. Laura, any questions?
Yes. So are you saying you want that tablecloth?
I want that tablecloth. Oh my gosh, more than anything.
Okay. Yes, we have a few questions. So
If you
while
ever
I
want me to talk, I can talk about an hour on Virginia Lee Burton too. So just
whatever you'd like to do.
next time.
Okay. Okay, so we do have someone who says that they are in LA and they would like to know what the website link for the library or for this
Ah,
collection is.
okay. The best thing, let me see if I can share this. Share to the desktop. Get out of this. Get out of this. Go to, okay, that didn't work. Let's stop the share. Let's go to much better. Can you see this? No, of course you can't.
No.
Let's try it again. Let's try it. Can you see this?
No.
Can you see anything?
Well, I can, there we go.
Okay, curlin.umn.edu. And I haven't been up to date on the blogging because it's been a busy semester, but if you go to Explore the Curlin, those online exhibits that I was talking about are all here. So if you're a teacher or a librarian or you just want to share this stuff, for example, this is that pre-separated art. So it's a whole exhibit about the different techniques they did before they had a way to digitize and do the photo reproductions. Explore the Curlin. If we want to go to Explore the Curlin and you want to know what we got all of Pokey Little Puppy, we got all of Gustav Tengren. You can search the Curlin. So you're in LA and you're thinking of coming to Minnesota. It's an easy direct flight, just telling you. You make an appointment. You can page down and you can say to yourself, you know what I want more than anything? I want to search the collection and I want to see Arnold Lobel. And you just go Lobel. You can go to Anita or you can go to Arnold. Let's go to Arnold. And I bet you in the Arnold Lobel papers, you will see Frog and Toad are friends. And you will see corrected holograph, which is the handwritten manuscript and the type sketch, and then some sketches. Ooh, Hansel and Gretel. Pen and inks separations. Now remember, I want you to go to that separations, the color separations, how pictures make, because you are going to see blobs of gray on vellum, blobs of gray on plastic. You are not going to see what you see in the picture book because that's the printing process. So if you have any questions about what we have, that's when you email me and you say, Lisa, what do you got? So, so that's how you get to us. You can give us money, support the Curlin. We're very fond of money. And the Curlin Award and our special events are streamed. So if you go to the front page, we'll have our special events on there. So it's curlin.umn.edu, or you can always do this, Curlin. Maybe it'll come up. I'm trying to get to the Google. I go to it too often. Let's try this. UMN Children's Books Curlin. Let's see if that comes. There we go. That's what I wanted you to see. So you're going to see a list here. You'll either come directly to our website or you can go to the library website and that'll that'll get you there too.
Well, while we have this pulled up,
Oh, yes.
one of our other attendees was asking if you have any books written by Marion Bauer.
Oh,
Or
yes.
she
Yes, I don't need to look.
He lives
Yes.
here in the Twin Cities, I guess.
Yes. Yes. And yes, I'm a huge fan. You can tell. You know, that's funny. It's like somebody, when I became a new librarian at the Brooklyn Public Library as a public children's librarian, we had a required reading list that you had to read over 3 years. I mean, it wasn't overnight, but it was about 100 books. And somebody in the room, we had monthly book discussions, and somebody in the room said to the librarian who was in charge of this professional development, "You can't make me read." What? Why wouldn't I want to?
Uh,
So here we are at the welcome page, and if you want to search the collections, am I spelling this right?
yes.
There we go. Look. And then
Ah,
here are her papers. Found in. Search the type. What do you want? So that's what we do. And I usually go to the right and I just go there and it tells us what we have in the collection.
I'm just curious, what did she write? What are
Oh,
her books?
so chapter books, picture books. My favorite, truthfully, is mysteries. She's a great mystery writer.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna go here because do we want to go to, oh, somebody did a thesis on her and we have that.
Oh,
We want to go to the children's literature collections. Why isn't it telling me how to see archival object? Sure, let's go there. That wasn't helpful. Oh my God. Did you know that Am I Blue was the first young adult book that had gay lesbian kids in it? There
no.
were other books that it's sort of like behind, like a step behind, but this is the first one that was published specifically, a collection of short stories. It is such a great, so here we have in the collection Am I Blue, the corrected typescript, the correspondence, which means we hold her asking other authors like Bruce Coville. And, I'm the only librarian at the University of Minnesota who could say things like, last Monday, Bruce Coville, the author of Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher, stopped by for a visit. So we'll see the correspondence, the jacket, and the galley.
Wow.
So and now if you wanted to know um what books did she write, like you're going to the Red Balloon, you want to buy some, you want to go to the public library. See if that comes up. Did I spell it right? Yes, I did. Okay, papers. So here are her books. So I would read, if I was going to read something first, what would I read? Winter Dance. Oh my God, this is one of the most beautiful, perfect Minnesota picture books. Um, wow. Okay, I get to say I've read all of these.
Wow.
Oh, love this, love this. Oh, it's in other languages too. So if you want to read other languages. So this might have been the first one I read. And so watch this. It says T.C. Anderson Library. You cannot take this book home. You have to come and read it here. But your public library should have this book. I know the Hennepin County Library Central Library has this book, and you can get it in interlibrary loan. So if you live in Ramsey County, you can get it interlibrary loaned. So I'm just telling you. But you can't have
Okay.
my copy because my copy is a reference rare book copy. It's a first edition. It's probably signed by her.
Wow.
Do you
All
want to go
right.
back to me? Ha.
Thank you. All right. So another attendee is asking, is there a way for self-published books to be reviewed for awards or recommended reading lists, or are those processes only available to books that are published by a publisher?
That's an interesting question. I personally have been known to read self-published books if they are produced professionally.
Hmm.
So, for example, in Minnesota, there's a company called Wise Inc. that does children's books and picture books. I have read some of their books and have promoted them for awards. But for the most part, no. For the
Hmm.
most part, no. And I will give you a very good, you saw that big pile of mail.
Mhm.
Um, thousands of children's picture books are published professionally every year. Those books have been seen by 22 people before the bookseller hands it to you or the librarian hands it to you. 22 people, professionals in this business. And I can look across the room and tell you a book that was self-published. It's
Mm.
some kind of odd, weird, fun font that is unreadable. It is laid out badly. It's more than 16 spreads because you can do whatever you want if you're publishing it yourself. There's no constraints. The color might be off. It could be factually inaccurate. There are independent presses. So instead of self-publishing, maybe go to an independent press. Marlena Miles publishes Indigenous authors and illustrators. She puts out 2 books a year. Readers to Eaters puts out 3 books a season, so maybe 6 books a year. So it doesn't have to go to Penguin Random House, but it should have an art director who looked at it. When you know, if you're in Minnesota, we have Lerner, we have Capstone, we have Abdo, we have children's book publishers here. And honestly, my time is finite.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and Marissa Moss, who does the Amelia's Notebooks, has an independent press. She may, I think, tops 10 books a year. So I will read independent presses, but self-published, it's kind of a hard no. I'm on the Sidney Taylor Award committee for the next 2 years, and it specifically says no self-published books.
Fair enough. Okay. How do the award-winning books compare to books that the children prefer?
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question. I have been on an award committee in which there was a winner and 5 honor books. And I'm here to tell you that year, the award-winning book is what we call a shelf sitter. If I have a class of children's literature undergraduates, and I put up a slide and I say, and this was my Newbery year, how many people have read the winner? They're sitting on their hands. And then and you're not allowed to say which book you love the best. You're not allowed to share that. It's a big secret forever. Well, actually, I can say the book I love the best, but I can't tell you what other people felt. But somebody else was the winner. Anyway, the book I loved the best that year was a book called Hoot, because I was a children's librarian and I read it aloud to 4 classes, and kids loved it, and it was funny and fun, and it had meat to it, and it was a great read. And I stand in front of the slide. How many people have read this book, this book, this book? How many have read Hoot? The hands go up. And I'm like, yep, I was right. They were wrong. I was
Interesting.
on the National Book Awards and I am allowed to say this because they don't have a secret. I was on the National Book Awards. I really wanted Flora and Ulysses by Kate DiCamillo to win. The book is magnificent. It stands the test of time. It is just the greatest book. I got phone calls from the other committee members when it won the Newbery because it did not win the National Book Award. So yeah, you have to remember it's 15 strangers in a room over a weekend with too much caffeine and sugar. So that's grown-ups picking. The children's choice books, for example, the Irma Black, the Caldecott is simply for the illustrations. It still has to be a good book. It still has to be a good story, but the award is for the illustrations. The Irma Black Award is for the illustrations and the author.
Mm,
It's the actual book. The award is for the whole book. So I trust the kids. Once we get to the finalists, any one of the books the kids choose, I'm
yeah.
for.
Okay, somebody is interested in these first Friday tours that you mentioned. Are
Tomorrow.
reservations? Are
No,
reservations?
nope.
No.
Come
Okay.
come around 11:20 so you can get a parking space. You go to the Law Library parking lot and park on the lower side. It's not expensive. The whole event is free. You come inside. We have a lovely little lunch. I have no idea what lunch is this week, but it's because it's a committee that does it. But the lunch is usually like some local restaurant caters it.
Wow.
And yeah, it's yummy. The egg rolls go first. I should know. No, like if you have Thai food or something like that, get an egg roll. They're really good. I've never get one. Um, but have a little lunch. It's in room 120, holds about 175 people. Every seat is filled.
Wow.
There's the talks. The curator gives a little talk, and it's never not fascinating. You might think, I have no interest in women in computing. And then last time it was women in computing, and it was who knew that the digital materials in the TV show Max Headroom was done by a woman artist whose work was with computers when nobody was working with computers. I had no idea. And we hold that. We hold those materials here. The first heart surgery. Did you know the first heart surgery to save the life of a baby was done at the University of Minnesota? It was one of the university lights. See, you knew this. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know there were two patients? There were no
No.
heart lung machines. They hooked up the parent. The parent was the heart lung machine for the child, pumping their blood while they cleared the field and did the surgery.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Ha.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So you might, you look at like what they're talking about, you go, I have zero interest. Well, I'm telling you, it really doesn't matter who's talking. You have an excited curator about their stuff. It's a TED Talk. It's teeny. It's 15 minutes. And then if people want to ask questions, and then there's a tour
Oh.
at 1 o'clock. So you have a little lunch, listen to two lectures or one, depending. Sometimes I take the whole time because I can just talk and talk and talk. But usually it's two very short lectures. And then if you want to take a tour, and sometimes I'm the one giving the tour. It's like whoever raised their hand Thursday. Like I'm sure I got an email right now saying there'll be no tour if someone doesn't raise their hand. And somebody, so it's the first Friday. So there's one tomorrow. I'm not going to be there because I have a physical therapy appointment that I can't miss. Yeah. But also it's recorded. So you can watch it online if you don't want to leave Los Angeles to come to the Kerlan. I love the idea that somebody in LA.
Yeah.
And so it's online. Can log on from the library's website first Friday. And it's also recorded. So if you want to go back and look at stuff I've talked about before or what other people have talked about before. Because yeah, we're each curator is nuts about their own collection.
Does the website list each topic that's coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here,
Okay.
let's look.
Okay.
Well,
Perfect.
I can't look. Let's see. Share. Let's do this. Let's see if this works. First Friday, UMN libraries. Ding. First Fridays.
There
Okay,
it
I got
is.
to tell you, it might. Let's see if they've changed them because so it's sensory. Okay. So it's changed over because somebody couldn't do it. So a touch of tweed Jewish garment business in the Twin Cities is tomorrow, and poetry aloud is tomorrow. And then we swapped with Ellen Engseth Immigration History Research Center. So, immigrants and art, and I'm doing heartfelt, groundbreaking, unexpected how Indigenous characters are portrayed in children's materials. And that's going to be June because we had to move all of them because of ICE stuff. We were locked down. It really
Mm,
sucked.
yeah.
So tomorrow will be the May 1st one. That is the same. Sorry, I was wrong. So May 1st is tomorrow. And then March, which was canceled, moved to June.
It looks like you do need to register or it's encouraged.
Sure, that just is like so they have enough soda. So
Sure. Okay.
register.
Okay.
Yeah, so register. I never register because I just stand in the back.
Okay.
Do
Another
I have
question.
only picture books? No, I have
Yeah.
everything. Young adult, chapter books. Yeah. Well, also pulps, series books. So if you want to come and read the entire series of Cherry Ames Student Nurse,
Oh my gosh.
we can do that. I got to tell you, they don't hold up over time.
Ah.
I came here and I was like, oh, I get to read Cherry Ames Student Nurse again. I haven't read it since third grade. Oh, it's horrible.
And
So,
Sue Barton, wasn't there a Sue Barton?
yes,
Yeah.
we have all of those.
Yes. Okay.
So yes, we have pulps, we have comics, we have children's books, picture books, and as I said, I have this incredible collection of pop-up books that's coming in another month. Pristine, about 800 pop-up books in pristine, a private collection that's being donated to us. So that's very cool. And what else?
Well, I have a question about the history of children's books. I mean,
Uh-huh.
when were children's books first created? I'm not sure that's the right word. I mean, if we go back to I don't know, the
I
middle.
want you to read a book
Okay.
called Minders of Make Believe.
Okay.
And that's by Leonard Marcus, my favorite children's literature scholar. Minders of Make Believe, because the history of children's books is old and young at the same time. For example, ABC books, very old. Horn books, how children learn to read, very, very old. 1600s, 1500s.
Okay. Wow.
Aesop's fables.
Well, yeah, true.
Fables and fairy tales and what we call granny tales were first verbal stories told, then written down.
Okay.
Prose stories. Now remember, these are fairy tales, folklore, biographies. The beginning of what we consider the modern children's book. We think more of Peter Rabbit, Beatrix Potter.
Mm.
We think of Crane. We think of Treasure Island. Now
Oh.
remember, these were family stories, so it was more of a crossover. So
Mhm.
the actual children's books were moral tales. In Germany, the Peter tales. Do you know these? Shock-headed Peter tales. Pauline Boss, Professor Emeritus here, who wrote, if you ever, you should have her talk. She wrote all about ambiguous loss. Like, what
Oh.
does that mean? And she coined the phrase ambiguous loss. And she used to joke around that the shock-headed Peter books, which are cautionary tales, like don't do this or this horrible thing will happen to you, you know, follow directions and do what your grown-ups say, or these bad things will happen, explains Nazi Germany to a T. Because every child knows these shock-headed Peter books.
Wow.
And we have a great collection because remember, our collection here is in Minnesota, and therefore the interest of previous curator was German language and fairy tales and folklore and the Jack Zipes collection. So we have an extensive collection of those books if you ever want to be horrified what people were sharing with children way back when.
Oh, ugh. Okay.
So the modern picture book, we kind of point at Beatrix Potter and then to Wanda Gog. And remember the award books, which is the core of this collection, 50 years ago, um, those were books promoted for American authors and illustrators because in the 1919, the majority of children's books were imports from
Oh,
England, or in translation, Pinocchio came from Italy. In translation, Grimm's Tales came from Germany. So promoting American grown books was a big deal.
all right. Well, we do have a question that I think you could expand on a lot. It's someone has said, clearly you love your job. Whenever you leave your work, what are your favorite memories that you'll take with you?
Holy crap. Oh my God. What would,
Well, you don't have to answer it. We can just
well,
say that there's so
that
many memories that you
Well,
can't
that's the
even.
thing. The joy of this job, I think the whole joy of this job, leaving New York was a huge deal for me because I loved that job. And I couldn't imagine anything as good and anything as cool and anything as fun. There are only 5 of us in the United States.
Wow. Oh,
So, yeah.
didn't know.
So we all know each other. We go to the American Library Association conference. We go to the Children's Literature Conference. We serve on panels together and things like that. I'm not unaware of the gift of having this job. I also want you to know anyone who's been in academia, I wasn't their first pick.
Mm.
I know this for a fact. I was not their first picked. It was a failed, like they picked someone, it didn't work out, and then it was a failed search. I applied in January and they finally they offered me the position in August.
Oh,
And I knew a lot of the people who wanted this job. So I don't take it for granted at all. I'm so grateful for the Miranker family for endowing this chair because when I say there are 5 of us, I am the only endowed chair in children's literature with a rare book collection. I
oh.
am the only position in the United States where it is guaranteed that when I retire, I think it will be 2028, when I retire, they have to put in a children's literature person in this position. If you go to UConn, the curator is the photography curator who just happened to have children's books too, because when the children's book person retired, they did not replace her with a children's book person. You go to the Arnie Nixon Library in California. They hired a wonderful human being for this amazing young adult, specifically young adult literature collection, not 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 a specialist in children's books, in child development, in education, in pedagogy. That person will have my job, the person who has those things. And it was the Miranker family a human family who said, we think this is important. And words cannot express how grateful I am. So, what will I remember? I will remember that I can walk away from this job and know that this collection will be in good hands with someone whose vision, and I don't know what their vision will be, but whatever their vision is, it will be aligned with what Dr. Kerlan wanted, what Karen Nelson Hoyle wanted, and what I want, which is to be open access and share these materials with as many people who are interested in them.
Well, I just have to thank you for all the work you do with children and all the people like you over the decades who have worked with children and really ignited a love of learning. I will never forget as a child my utter joy when it was summer vacation and I could spend every day at the library in my little town and just inhale all of those gorgeous children's books. And it just truly is one of my fondest memories and led to a lifetime of loving reading. And I think it's in no small part due to people like you who read to children and show us all those good books. So,
I was just talking to my GP, my general practitioner, and I guess, I had noticed there's a lot of children in her office and coming to see her. So the City Clinic, in case you want to know. And since COVID, they used to have like books and games and things like that, but they don't now. And I said, I have review copies. Can I drop some by? And do you know Reach Out and Read? And that's my question for you. Do you know Reach Out and Read, which is an organization that provides training and board books for well baby visits? So instead of the doctor going like this and seeing if the eyes are tracking, they take the board book and they show the baby the board book. And then they give the board book to the family to take home free.
Beautiful.
And those are the things, we're so lucky in the Twin Cities not only to have fabulous bookstores, but also a branch of 826 MSP. So if you're in San Francisco, you know 826.
What is 826?
Oh, 826 is an after-school tutoring and writing center. It's by
Oh,
Cedar Riverside,
oh.
and they embed in schools. It's all mostly volunteers like me, people like me. We think about like, what will I do if I retire? I don't want to retire, but what would I do?
Mhm.
So, and here at the Kerlan, I am so lucky to have retirees who come in a couple days a week, and we don't stuff envelopes. That's not what we do. We create materials for community engagement, hands-on activities. Um, do you know the Children's Theater? We have a case at the Children's Theater that every time there's a new show, we create this case. So I think the reason Pinocchio's on my brain is we're doing a lot of Pinocchio research right now.
Well, I so much appreciate your time today. Again, you've taken a topic that I knew nothing about, that maybe perhaps many of our listeners didn't know much about, and you've really illustrated it. Your visuals were fantastic. They just made me smile. All those wonderful children's illustrations and the bright colors. And again, I remember my childhood when I see all those things. So it was just fascinating. I really appreciate your time. And thank you to the audience, as always.
Do you want to, I don't know if you can post or somewhere my phone number if anybody wants to get a hold of me. They're visiting the Twin Cities because you do have to make an appointment to
Ah,
come.
well, you could just tell us your phone number if you want
Okay,
to come up.
347 526 2165. That is my actual cell phone.
Ooh,
Don't
okay.
call after 9. And online on our website, there's askclrc at umn.edu. It's ASC, ask dash CLRC Children's Literature Research Center collections. Oh, look, you put it up. Thank you. And at UMN, but it's on our website, and you can make an appointment. Give us a week to pull materials because you never know who's here doing what. And we have to use heavy equipment. You have
Oh.
to be trained and certified. And I'm not and never will be because I'm afraid of heights. But if you interviewed, I'd say, are you afraid of heights? And if you are, you can't come because you have to work. Oh, there. Good job. Excellent. You
See,
guys are doing your
Grace
job.
is on it. All right. Well, thank you again. Even though I've given you a doctorate and you didn't have one, it
Mm,
sounds like you deserve to have one. So
well,
I really appreciate it. I want to again thank our sponsor, the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, as well as the OLLI program, and invite our listeners to join us next week on May 7th at 12:30 to learn more about the internationally recognized Institute of Community Integration, which is celebrating 40 years. And our speaker will be Dr. Amy Hewitt, the director of the Institute. So we will look forward to seeing all of you then. And meanwhile, get out there and enjoy this beautiful sunny day. Thank you very much. Bye.